Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, November 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And tonight we are in regular session. Our first item of business is to establish a quorum. We have all but one of our council members present with us. The next item of business is communications. And I want to take a moment to remember a wonderful, kind, generous, gentle council member extraordinaire, Mr. Jim Sands. And he passed away yesterday. And he served on council for 7 terms, from 1998 to 2011. He was president of council from 2012 to 2014. Taught many of us in the community with his wonderful and gentle spirit how to lead in a community, and was truly a great man. So if we all could just take a moment just to remember him as a special man. Thank you. Do we have any other communications from council members? Okay. We'll move on to reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Eliason. Okay. And Auditor Hecht is not able to be with us tonight. Mayor Patterson.
Just a couple things tonight, President Nisley. First, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Reisner for all the work that you did do on the Pocket Park and your advocacy for the plantings of the trees that now exist up at the Pocket Park on Carroll. So, Councilmember Reisner, thank you for that. The other is, I believe all of council received an email from Diane Bouvier, who is the secretary for the Commission on Disabilities. And the entire Commission on Disabilities is supportive and advocating for a change to the staffing ordinance to include a position for diversity, equity, and inclusion and ADA expertise to work under the HR director, or work with the HR director. So again, acknowledging that you all did receive that, but worth mentioning to the public. Those are the 2 items that I have for tonight, President Eisen.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll proceed now with ordinances for 3rd reading. 11321 is an ordinance amending certain sections of Athens City Code, Title 7, Traffic Code, Chapter 7.04, Chapter 7.05, Parking Regulations. And this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we adopt 11321.
Second. Okay. And we have a motion and second for approval of 11321. Do we have any comments or questions? Councilmember Crowell.
I'm interested in an amendment to 11321. Done a little bit of research on motorcycle parking in the state of Ohio, and given that we didn't raise our rates for a very long time until 2018, and then the office responsible for charging those rates was not clear on the new rates, and so has been charging the old rates. So it's quite a jump for some people from the original rates. I realize that these, had we been updating these and looking at inflation over the 40 years of these rates, they would be where they are proposed. But I am considering, I would like to propose an amendment to 11321, which removes the increase in the motorcycle parking rates.
And Law Director Eliason, we do have a motion and second on the floor, so we could have them, if they're interested in that, to withdraw the motion to approve, so that Councilmember Crowell could present the move to a motion to amend.
I'd like to make a motion to withdraw.
Okay, and second. Okay, so the original motion to approve has been withdrawn, and Councilmember Crowell, am I understanding you're making a motion to amend this ordinance to reflect that the rate for the motorcycle permits remain at the cost of $20 per year?
Correct.
And do we have a second for that amendment? Second. Second from Councilmember Grace. Okay. So any further discussion on the amendment? Yes, Councilmember Fall.
I think this goes to what we have been talking about, putting on a lot of the ordinances a review time, like a trigger to be able to review it. I think that many of these things have just passed through, you know, they just kind of go out of people's view, and then it comes up again. And so I think that we need to be able to do something with making sure that things are reviewed even when people on council are not the same, so sort of thing.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember McCary.
Thanks. I'm just curious if there are any comments about the potential benefits of doing a partial increase at this time, or if there might be consequences to that I might not realize.
Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you. So, Member McCary, I was looking at lots of different university towns in the state of Ohio. There does seem to be a lot more information about what universities charge for this particular permit than municipalities. However, I did find municipalities that were as low as $10 per year. And I did find those that were as high as $75 per year. So there is a great range. We do know that Ohio University charges $4 a month, so at least with that situation, you could only purchase your permit for those months that you actually, instead of doing it for an annual, you could just, if you're only in the summertime, you're going to save money there. So I think in balance with both that aspect of Ohio University's fee, as well as what I saw across the state of Ohio, I thought that the fees where they have been since 2018 were appropriate. You make a good point, so I think my proposed amendment is just to not to do this increase at all, and maybe next year, maybe we can look at a more incremental, or maybe this more drastic doubling. But I think at this point, my motion is to simply remove this from this ordinance.
Any other comments or
Move to
questions?
change.
Councilmember Reisner and then Councilmember Fall.
I just want to say I support your amendment, but since we are sort of back into fact-finding mode again, could we get some idea of just how many stickers the city issues?
Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
So I believe I asked for that information. I believe it was 28
28.
was the number in this calendar year.
So 28 times 20, that's, boy, we're making a lot of money on that.
I think I calculated it, you know, it's roughly maybe the change is within a few $100s
Yeah.
of difference. It's not a major city breaker.
But even 28 is not that many. It seems like we should be trying to encourage more somehow.
So that was my thought too, is
Yeah.
that this discourages, as we heard from one member of the city, that this might discourage him from purchasing one, that we might actually receive less money even at the higher rates if enough people decide they're just going to fill a parking space and put in quarters.
Right. Yeah, that's my thought.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Fall.
If the discussion is to leave it at the price that it is now, then I would suggest that we table because it doesn't make sense to go through if we're not changing the amount of money.
But we are changing other fees.
There are other things in the ordinance.
Right,
There
right.
there are
There's-
contracting
There's
fees
a lot more
and
stuff here.
bags and,
It's
yeah.
just one
yeah.
element.
Yeah,
So it's just one part of it, so,
it's not,
yeah.
so the whole baby out.
So, yeah, in fact, I'm wondering if there's a need perhaps, well, we're going to finish the discussion on the amendment. Mayor Patterson.
I would just like to tell council that I am fully supportive of this amendment to amend. I would also encourage council and would like to be on the record for suggesting looking into in 2022, possibly a seasonal variation to this permit to where someone can, decides that they don't want to ride from December through February or something of that sort, to where there can also be a rate that's adjusted based upon season. But again, I'm supportive of this change, just recognizing that that rate that was set in 2018 will be reflected on those permits moving forward, because there was a disconnect between the passage of that ordinance and the billing office.
Okay. So we have the motion and second. Do we have any other comments or questions? This is the motion to amend, and what we're doing is leaving the motorcycle fee at $20 per year. Yes, Councilmember Grace.
I just want to thank Member Crowell and also the resident who came to council to speak about this. And I think it makes sense for the city to be encouraging those who ride motorcycles to purchase the permit rather than parking in full parking spaces and feeding meters. So thank you.
Okay, yes, Councilmember Crowell.
In my research, I also discovered the popularity of electric motorcycles, not really electric motorcycles, but electric scooters, and how much more, I think the industry has grown by 125% in the last few years. So that was encouraging too. Motorcycles themselves, although they're much more fuel efficient, their emissions are poor, but the increase in electric scooters and motorcycles, I think, would be very positive for this program, this permit program. Thank you.
Good, okay. Thanks for all the discussion and comments. And so we have the motion and second for amending 11321. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. Before we move on, my question to administration is there any need, because of these other fees and the effective date of them, is there any need to suspend tonight? Or should we just move on and we can pass it within 2 weeks?
I don't think that there's a need to get this done
Okay,
quickly. So
okay. All
we
right,
have
thank
time.
you. All right, 12521 is our next ordinance, and this is an ordinance amending the 2021 appropriation ordinance and is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nyes. I'd like to make a motion to approve 012521.
Second.
Thank you, Member Fall. This is the ordinance, appropriation ordinance for the valve replacement needed at the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $39,000. Thank you, President Nyes.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval of 12521. And is there any additional comment or questions from council members, administration, elected officials, our audience? Yes, Councilmember Reisner.
I just want to say I support valves.
Thank you. Okay. If no other questions or comments, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 12621 is an ordinance approving an education incentive program for non-union city employees and is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nyes. I'd like to make a motion to approve 12621.
Second.
Thank you, Member Fall. As the title indicates, this is a new program in human resources of the city for non-union city employees. It would incentivize employees to stay up on necessary training for their position, and they would have some monetary incentive to possibly complete college degrees or professional certifications. And the HR director has done a nice job to spell out the criteria and how this program would be administered, and then what the actual monetary incentives would be for non-union employees. Thank you, President Nyes.
We have a motion and second for approval. Do we have any comments or questions from council members, elected officials, administration, or our audience? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 12821 is an ordinance authorizing the auditor to reduce 2021 year-end appropriations, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. I'd like to make a motion to approve 12821.
Second?
Thank you, Member Fall. This is a fairly regular authorization that we give the auditor's office in order to help our budget accounting. Thank you.
We have a motion and second for approval of 12821. Do we have any comments or questions? From council members, elected officials, our audience? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 12921 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 6621, authorizing a contract for right-of-way acquisition services for the West Union Street Improvements Project Number 322, and is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. As the title says, this is an ordinance that is amending a previous ordinance, 6621, which will allow the administration to contract for right-of-way acquisition services. And then the section 1 then goes on to say the amounts, which comes to $300,000. So I would like to make a motion that we adopt 12921.
Second?
We have a motion and second. Do we have questions or comments?
I'd just like to make one comment that this ordinance is not authorizing the project itself or any construction thereof. It's just providing the necessary authority that if and when right-of-way acquisitions are needed, the monies will be available.
Okay. Other comments or questions from city council members? Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Yes, thank you. I would like just to acknowledge communications from citizens in Athens concerned about this area, in particular the very old trees that line the old Hocking River as it comes along Union Street there, across from Larry's Doghouse and other iconic Athens businesses and locations. And this is a concern of councils. I believe that a number of ODNR and other people have been involved in looking at this, and I expect them to continue to be involved. And as Mr. Reisner said, we are not approving this tonight, but I do appreciate the communications and would like to continue to look into this. Thank you, President Reisner.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from council members or elected officials? And do we have anybody from the audience that wants to speak? Yes, Ms. Kronansky.
Joan Kronansky, 56 Mile Street. Well, thank you for acknowledging my letter and several of you who responded. Several weeks ago, I contacted Councilmember Reisner to try and get this explained, what this was. I knew there was acquisitions taking place, and it took a while to exactly find out what this was. And the email that I sent to all of you explaining the situation with multi-use path, this is the only way I knew how to introduce it was with this particular ordinance, because what this is going to do is acquire the property that would be useful. I spent a half an hour on the phone with Andy Stone, the Service Safety Director, last week, talking about all of this. I viewed the spot with another citizen and the ODNR Urban Forester, Ann Bonner. She actually alerted us to this situation, and hopefully this week we'll be able to do a walkthrough with Service Safety Director Jessica Dunn, Assistant Engineer, maybe Chris Nisley, or any of the council members that want to go. I haven't had a response. I sent the email out late today because it's been a long day. But these acquisitions also, besides taking property or right away, and probably from the university, in this case, the multi-use path, right? And when you think about it, if you would build a multi-use path to the south of those trees, the trees are all leaning in south because all their roots are going that way because of the situation that's on the north side of it. You're going to bring in some equipment to dig a large, wide ditch from the Habitat house, possibly, Andy said, all the way down to the Habitat store. You're going to lay gravel and underpinnings, and you're going to put tar on top. I mean, and I just couldn't even envision this happening. It was just scary. So, so hopefully we can continue this discussion and see if this is really a necessary part of this project. The other thing I would like to say in terms of acquisitions, I did go to the open hearing with the designers for this project. I stated my claims then, and I'll state them now. I had two other really big concerns with this project. The roundabout at Schaefer and West Union, which means that we're going to have a roundabout at that point. I did a lot of research on roundabouts in urban areas. Supposedly this is for, what, the safety of the pedestrians and the safety of people in vehicles, which is fine, but when you put roundabouts in the middle of an urban area, and think about that intersection of Schaefer and West Union, and there's crossings there. They're going to repair sidewalks so people can utilize that. They're going to put in ADA lifts on the one side so that people can utilize that. And I don't think we need a roundabout there for two reasons. Number one, young people, the elderly, and people with physical disabilities, according to the statistics I saw, are most likely to have an accident in a roundabout. And we're going to have a roundabout that is going to have a large majority of traffic, at least 2 times a day, maybe 3 times if you want to think about lunch. So in the morning, people going to work at the university and other places in the city. In the evening, leaving home. I mean, there's a steady stream. I'm assuming most of you have been down on West Union Street, or maybe you choose not to be at these particular times. And also at lunchtime, right? And then on Hot Dog Tuesday, right? And so when you have a steady stream of traffic going in one direction, the side streets can't get into the roundabout. The problem is, now I saw this example in northern Poland. They had roundabouts about every 3 or 4 intersections on this main highway. Well, it was a road. It was like maybe 4 lanes, 2 and 2. But at every 2 intersections, they had traffic lights. And this was an urban area also. And then they had a roundabout. So the traffic lights actually control the traffic so that people on the side streets could get into the roundabouts. But that's not the situation on West Union Street. There's no traffic lights. I mean, you have to go all the way up to Congress Street and then all the way out to 682. And so when you have one lane of traffic, and I'll be glad to send anybody that's interested all the research that I found on that. Besides, they're going to take down the maple tree on the corner in order to put in the roundabout. Okay. So, and think about this construction on Union Street, and keep in mind what's going on Stimson and how long it's been going on Stimson. You're going to put a roundabout at Schaefer and West Union. You're going to do infrastructure work, because that's part of the project. You are also going to do some lane widening and changing, curbs, sidewalks, and then you want to have Larry's Doghouse, have another alternative road built. Think about all the time that's going to take. I mean, I just think if we did the infrastructure and the straight, I know I'm talking too long.
Your time's up.
Okay, so I'm going to go.
I'll be frank.
All I want to say is investigate.
Okay.
Talk to the people at Public Works. Find out what's going on. Think about everything that's happening here, because sometimes we take our professional people for granted, as we should, because they're doing their job.
Yeah.
But look at look at this and think about your community and what you really want out of a
Okay.
project like this. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Councilmember Grace.
Just the last time I spoke with someone in our city administration about this particular project, I believe that I understood correctly that this particular roundabout is not likely to remain in the plans. I didn't know if administration had an update on that.
I don't have an update on that.
But that there's at Stimson or 56 and 682, where at the far end of Union, there is a plan for a roundabout, but that there were a lot of challenges with the other one. But that I could be mistaken, but that was my understanding following a conversation.
So what we clearly need to have is some communication between legislative body and administration. So Mayor Patterson, if you can help direct us to, the people we need to talk to.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thanks, Ms. Kornansky, for coming in tonight and raising the issues. And yes, Mr. Delac, excuse me.
So, just a bit of a counterpoint. My name's
Just
Rob Delac.
if you could give your name, and address, and if you represent a group.
I should know that automatically, right?
No, but the rest of the viewing audience doesn't, so when it's on streams,
Yep.
they'll know.
124 Morris Avenue, here in the city. So as a counterpoint to that, this project has been in the works for a long time. I was at public meetings and in discussions with the city engineers about this project at least 2 years ago. They took a lot of the things that Ms. Kornansky talked about into consideration, but there's important requirements for the shared use path is a solution instead of putting bicycles on the roadway, which on a road like this with 35-mile-an-hour traffic speeds is not a good place to put bicyclists. It's not where they're going to be comfortable. It's not where they're going to want to ride. They're going to want to ride in the shared use path or a sidewalk. So that's a critical part of this project. The roundabout, it was, I think, a difficult situation to fit one in there, and maybe that's changed. But roundabouts make it safer for everyone. They don't make it more dangerous, even for elderly. Sure, there's more likely for an elderly person to have an accident in a roundabout, but the rates of crashes in roundabouts are significantly reduced. Pedestrian crashes, 40% reduced. That covers all the categories she was talking about. So it's not true that it makes it less safe. It's going to be a safer situation. And maybe the city has found that they can't quite fit it in and make it safe enough or something possibly. But roundabouts are good, and pretty much anywhere. We have one in the city right down the street from this, and it works great. Slows traffic down. So I think we shouldn't jump to conclusions here and think there's terrible things happening. This is a project that's been going on for a while, and I'd like to hear some updates on it too, personally. But I think I also worked with the Disabilities Commission's Accessibility Committee, and we met with Jessica Dine on a number of occasions to talk about this project, review drawings, and make sure things looked like they were being designed for accessibility. So all that work has been put into this as well. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think maybe it's still worth taking a look. But let's not throw a wrench in this. Thanks.
Okay. So we do have a motion and second for approval. We thank you for the comments. Yes, Lorraine, Ms. McCosker, yes, if you'd like to come up. And give us your name and address, and if you represent a group.
Is the microphone like right here? Okay.
Yeah,
It's
you're fine.
Lorraine McCosker, 59 Elmwood in Athens. And so I would like an explanation of where we are in this process, because I totally missed it in this planning process. I think it was happening during COVID. And so can you explain to me where we are with this at this point?
I can give a brief overview,
Okay.
and I can, and supplemented by what the mayor knows, but basically we have been in the planning process with public meetings for several years. I think it's in the final design and of course the appropriations of these monies. Ann Bonner did raise, who's with Ohio Department of Natural Resources, did raise the issue that we have some very historic trees in the canal bed area. and was very, and she and David Ingram from the Shade Tree Commission had previously walked that site last year, and they were in the midst, within the last several weeks, of getting updates and working with Jessica Adine and Sully in the Public Works Department to provide what assurances they could with this final design to see that the trees were going to be saved if at all possible, and trying to work around that in some way. And I'm not sure with what plans there might be at this point on modifications to the multi-use plan or not, or pathway. That I'm not
So
sure.
this ordinance is the allocation of funding?
This is the allocation of funding for the for right-of-way.
Okay.
So that if purchases are need to be made for the right-of-way, then they have allocated enough money for that to be able to happen.
Okay.
Are there, Councilmember Fall, do you have some updates to add to that?
Well, what I want to say is that I have a lot of confidence in in Jessica Adine, our engineer. She is very good about being able to listen to people's concerns and options, and I feel comfortable going through with this acquisition for right-of-way, because they do listen and they do take into account
Okay.
people's concerns.
So to clarify, Lorraine, this is one step in the process,
Okay.
but it's not.
Well, I do have a statement. I did send it to council, but I'd like to read it here.
Okay.
Does my 3 minutes start?
Well,
now?
if you're going to read it
Start
quickly
a
or
long time ago.
summarize, that would be okay. And I
Okay.
do want to allow time for the mayor to
Okay.
add other updates
So I
too.
just would like to remind council that this area is unique in that this was the original Hocking River riverbed, rechannelized by the Army Corps in the late 1960s, before the National Environmental Policy Act and environmental laws were in place. And likely, if indeed it happened today, it would be a very different project. So those trees are the remnants of the river that we had. And we see them throughout the university and in other areas. You'll see them in front of the eyeglass place. So these are very historic witnesses to what Southeast Ohio is about. And I think every effort should be taken to be very cautious in how we approach this project. So I did indeed consult with Ann Bonner and walk the site with her. And Ann indeed did bring this to my attention. And I think it's really important. So my requests are that the multi-use pathway be removed from the proposal. And I quite really don't, I bike this almost daily. I don't quite understand that we need something 20 feet from a bike path. This is very similar to what happened on East State Street. And that the city implement a plan of precaution to protect these trees during the construction. I know there are wells planned, but I'm not really sure how that will impact them. And that we have the best practices. I sent links to City Council, just a couple. And then we have an arborist on site when this is happening, a practicing arborist. One that is very familiar with how to maintain trees during this process. Finally, I'd like to say that I do not support this project. We just came out of COP26. Everybody needs to be, all city governments, everyone has to have all hands on deck. During a time of climate crisis, we do not need this project. And I would urge the city to consider climate in every action, and to address our tree canopy and reforestation, and not cut any more trees. So thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Okay. Mayor Patterson, did you have any information you wanted to add, or about other updates, or any other information you might have that would?
No, other than Councilmember Crowell reached out to me earlier today and just wanted some more clarification on the multi-use pathway, which he was unfamiliar with, and so I provided Councilmember Crowell with, I think it was 4 attachments that certainly reference that particular piece of this project. And then I will follow up on the roundabout, on what the status is of the roundabout. But I would encourage City Council to reach out to Director Ali Baja and Jessica Dine, Assistant Engineer Dine as well, to get more information on it. But
Okay, thank you.
no
Thanks.
other updates.
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and second for approval, and this is, once again, just the contract for the right-of-way acquisition services for West Union. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 13021 is an ordinance authorizing design engineering services for the Armitage Road Bikeway Spur Slip Repair Project number 348 and introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 130-21.
Second?
As you read, President, nicely, this ordinance is just to get a landslide slip on Armitage Road bike path, or bikeway, repaired. So I hope everyone will vote in favor of this. I'd like to see it get done.
We have a motion and second for approval of 13021. Do we have any comments, questions from council members, elected officials, or the audience? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 13121 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for new pavement and guardrail replacement on Stimson Avenue and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the ordinance. Uh-oh, somehow
So
here it is.
you got it.
I'm sorry. 131-21.
Second.
Okay, sorry for
Okay,
the confusion
so
there.
So we have a motion and second for approval of this, and this is for .37 miles of length of Athens and .2 miles. And we have the map attached, and this is for new pavement and guardrail replacement on Stimson Avenue. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes,
I think,
Councilmember Fall.
this is to enhance also the safety of that area and it is a particular sensitive spot with that sort of thing. So I encourage this.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we did note in the original discussion, I think Mr. Delac reported on a place that I think is beyond the scope of this particular project, but it might be the guardrail that is governed by Department of Transportation, where there's a wash just as the guardrail ends on the close side of the Stimson Bridge that is beginning to erode. So we might make note of that as we work with them.
I would
Yes.
also like to identify for future reference for DOT and stuff, is that there are a lot of pedestrians that go across that bridge, going off into the Bong Hill area and stuff. And so it's very important to recognize that there are pedestrians in that area.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Council members, elected officials, or the audience? Okay, not. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. 13221 is an ordinance granting a special right-of-way use permit to Michelle Jennings, the owner of 28 South May Avenue, to construct a privacy fence. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 13221.
Second.
Thank you. Pretty straightforward. We do these all the time. It's a 10-year right-of-way permit, and then after that, it's administrative okaying it after.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and second for approval of 13221. Any questions or comments from council members, elected officials, or our audience? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. And some of you may have looked at a copy of our agenda that had 13321, but we are moving on where that's down and under the second reading. So we're moving on now to ordinance 13421. And this is an ordinance amending certain sections of Athens City Code, Title 7, Traffic, and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith, and introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 13421.
Second?
Thank you, Member Fall. And this ordinance is the result of a lot of work from our law director's office and our clerk of council to review and update the city code, Title 7, which is traffic, so that it corresponds with and aligns with state ordinance or state law.
Okay. So we have a motion and second for approval of 13421. Any comments or questions from council members? Yes, Councilmember Fall.
I want to say thank you to the law director. This has been a long process and a needed process, so thank you.
And any other comments or questions, elected officials, council, or audience members? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 13521 is an ordinance amending certain sections of Athens City Code, Title 13, General Offenses, and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith, and is introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. And this ordinance does the same as the previous ordinance, except this is updating Title 13, our general offenses. And both of these two ordinances, in addition to aligning our local code with state law on these issues, also include changes to make our city code gender neutral in these chapters, titles rather. And did I already make a motion to approve?
Yeah, and do we have a second? Okay, thank you, that's what we're saying. Okay. Okay. All right. Any comments or questions? And once again, our thanks, I think, from all the council members that Councilmember Falls expressed previously, all the work, Law Director Eliason. It's been a real labor, we know, and it'll help move us along for better enforcement and making our laws consistent. Okay. If no comments or questions from anyone else or anyone in the audience, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 13621 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 4117 to include a biodiversity conservation plan as part of the Athens Sustainability Action Plan. And this is introduced by all members of council. And I believe Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President
Our
Isley. Yes, as discussed at committee and then at first reading, the Environment and Sustainability Commission Chair, Ms. Amy Delac, as well as another member of the commission, Stefan Gleisberg, who I would like to announce is moving on from the city of Athens. He is moving to the state of Wisconsin, and so the commission appreciates the work that he did not only on this, but on all the years that he's been on the commission, and we'll be looking to President Isley for a replacement on that, but I would like to make a motion to approve 13621.
Second?
Okay. We have a motion and second. Do we have any comments or questions from our council members, elected officials, from our audience members? Yes, Councilmember
I
Fall.
would just like to say thank you. This sort of community and citizen involvement makes our city that much better. Amy Delac has an immense amount of expertise, as along with other people in the Sustainability Commission. And so this is an amazing amount of expertise and knowledge that went into not only this, but also the sustainability plan. And so, thank you.
Okay, yes. Thanks for expressing all of our thanks to our Environmental and Sustainability Commission member, Delac. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the motion and second. If no other comments or questions from council members or elected officials or audience members, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. We now have an ordinance for second reading. This is 13321, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 23 Zoning Code, Chapter 23.08, Off-Street Parking and Loading, Unloading Regulations, and Chapter 23.10, Definitions, Table B, Off-Street Parking Requirements. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we amend 13321.
Second.
Thank you. Because we are bringing our short-term rental proposal forward, we decided, the code director pointed out that we need to put this language into this Table B to coordinate with the short-term rental process. Basically, it's to include in Table B under dwellings, owner-occupied, single-family, or short-term rental, to have 2 spaces for each dwelling unit, plus 1 space for each rented bedroom. So basically, if you were a short-term rental, you would say, I have a bedroom, and that would require 1 extra space in addition to the 2 spaces that you need as a residence. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and second for amending 13321, and as Councilmember Fall explains, it's adding some information at the table to make sure it's consistent with some of the regulations that are moving forward with our short-term rentals. So adding that the definitions of needing the 2 off-street parking spaces per dwelling and then the 1 per bedroom in the case of short-term rentals. Any questions or comments from council members? Elected officials, audience members? Okay. So we're voting on the amendment now. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. 13321 has been amended and read for the first time.
Thank you.
We now have ordinances for first reading. And 13721 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to suspend temporarily the fee for parking at metered spaces in the municipal parking garage and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion that we suspend the rules for 137-21.
Second.
The reason that the suspension is necessary is that in Section 1, the date that this begins is Thursday, December 2nd, which is only 2 weeks away. So we must suspend if we're going to get this done in time.
Okay. So we have a motion and second for suspending the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The rules have been suspended. Councilmember Reisner.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 137-21.
Second?
Okay. And as explained, it's providing free parking, and that parking is to begin after 5 on Thursday, December 2nd, and continue on the Thursdays through Saturday through December 23rd, 2021. Do we have any questions or comments from council members, elected officials, our audience members? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 13821 is an ordinance suspending Athens City Code, Section 7.05.03, continuous parking in the same location from Sunday, December 19th, 2021 through midnight on Saturday, January 1st, 2022, and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. There's no need to suspend this tonight since the beginning date is December the 19th. So essentially, you've already read it.
Okay.
So we can move on.
If no comments or questions from our council members, elected officials, or audience, we will move on to 13921. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an administrative services contract with the Hocking Athens Perry Community Action Programs, known as HAPCAP, for Community Development Block Grant, known as CDBG funds, program year 2022, and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Nicely. And this is the ordinance that was discussed last week in committee, and I think it outlines a fantastic partnership between the city and HAPCAP for the administration of some CDBG grant funding, and I believe it would be advantageous to the city to continue to build our partnerships with HAPCAP. And in committee discussions, we did request some information from the administration about some of the programs that in past have been funded or partially funded through these CDBG grants. And that was provided, I believe, to all council members. And so just thank you for that information. And it has, we've got from fiscal year 18, the Kimes Reservoir Rehabilitation, fiscal year 20, West Washington Street Safety Improvements, and fiscal year 20, Critical Infrastructure Program, the Wastewater Treatment Plant Dewatering Project. And these have been some significant benefits to the city of Athens as we've had grant funding to help us make some major infrastructure improvements.
Thank you. And this particular agreement is a non-competitive 2-year grant that will total to $150,000.
Yes.
Are there-
And,
Go ahead.
yeah, oh, pardon, that the administration services fee for that to be charged by HAPCAP is at 13% rather than the maximum of 15%, because the city will continue to handle some of the administration.
Good, thank you. Any comments or questions? And we'll move on to ordinance one. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Councilmember Reisner.
The ordinance mentions, includes fair housing program funds. Any idea where these type of funds would go for the city, for fair housing?
This is, the Fair Housing Funds project is a project that has, historically, it's already administered by HAPCAP.
Correct.
And it can, I believe, assist with renovations for individuals who can apply and qualify for assistance with doing some home repairs and renovations.
Exactly.
And has in past been used for some down payment assistance. And so those are programs that are ongoing within the city of Athens and have been administered through HAPCAP.
That's why I wanted to get enunciated, so, thank you.
Of course.
Good point. Okay, thank you. If no other comments or questions, we'll move on to 14021. And this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract extension to provide financial support for the operation of the Athens County Economic Development Council and declaring an emergency. Introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, President Isley. We received a very concise presentation on the Economic Development Council from Executive Director Molly Fitzgerald at committee. And this would authorize the mayor to enter into a 3-year extension of that very fruitful contract with the EDC that goes to December 31st, 2024. Thank you, President Isley.
Okay. And the support for this is $60,000 a year from the city to the Economic Development Council. Yes, Councilmember Fall.
This is one of the ways that the city works with, in partnerships with the county and the university to do a multitude of different economic development programs and projects. So it's been very fruitful in the past for us. It's great that we all combine to be able to have an even better council between the three big entities that are around. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mayor Patterson.
It also includes Ohio Health, Atlantis Hospital, as,
Okay,
Oh, okay.
thank you for bringing
yeah,
that up.
thank you.
All right. If no other comments or questions from council members, elected officials, or audience members, we'll move on to 14121. This is an ordinance authorizing 2022 staffing levels and non-union compensation and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, President Nisley. We are at 14121, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. So this is to approve the pay study analysis that was done by the city administration, and also to authorize the 2022 compensation, which would include the pay study included a total sort of reorganization of the pay bands, and then council also is supportive of a 2.5% cost of living adjustment increase for City of Athens employees. But because of the pay band reorganization, some employees are already getting a higher hourly rate. Everybody will get at least 2.5%, but how that is done is either through the pay band reorganization or through the complete cost of living adjustment. And that's it. Thank you, President Leslie.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? We have a few. Yes, Councilmember Fall?
I want to commend the administration for putting in the part-time and seasonal employees in this ordinance. Lisa and I have been working on a way of getting hourly and seasonal employees more money. We can't do a minimum wage across the city of, say, $15 because the legislature has impeded our ability to be able to do that. So this is the next best thing, and I very much appreciate it because hourly and seasonal employees are essential. There are lifeguards, our child care people, and they're essential to being able to have the quality of life that we have in Athens. And they save lives with the lifeguards and stuff. So I want to say thank you for this and putting it through.
Okay. Other comments? Yes, Councilmember McCary.
Yes, this is somewhat of a process question, but I would like to see gendered language removed from this fringe benefits section, and it's mostly the instance of he/she that I think can be changed to employee, and I don't know if that means an amendment now, or if that would have to go through some other
Just
way.
a change of language, yeah.
And can we do that without amending, though? Law Director Eliason, can we do that without amending it, or do we need to put an amendment
Well,
inserting that language?
I think isn't it the next one that we're talking about, 14221?
142 is the fringe benefit.
Oh,
And I think
then
that's
had-
what you,
That's
Okay,
next.
Thanks.
okay, we're good.
Excuse me.
Okay, because this first one, okay.
when we get to it, I can address that.
Thank you. Okay, so right now, we've just read 141. Any other comments or questions on this 14121? Okay. We will move on to 14221, and that's the ordinance adopting a fringe benefits package for non-union personnel within the city of Athens and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
Thank you, President Nisley. As mentioned, there are, this is the non-union fringe benefits package, and there are 5 changes to this package. The major ones are adding the educational incentive program, which was discussed in a previous ordinance, adding the holiday of Juneteenth, and then a couple of minor changes towards how leave is calculated. That's all I have. Thank you, President Nisley.
Okay, thank you. And so Law Director Elias and Councilmember McCary. the
Well,
question
I
of
think that it doesn't change by making the actual document gender neutral. I don't believe it changes any of the benefits. So that's something that I think that Clerk of Council and I could work on together
Okay,
to make that gender neutral.
okay, all right, great.
What the ordinance is doing is adopting the actual fringe benefits package.
So you could work through the language on that
We
package
can.
plan. Okay, great, thank you. We appreciate that, because we know it'll mean work. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to ordinance 14321. This is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract with the Employee Benefit Service Center to serve as the city's third-party health insurance administrator and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. This is, basically annual authorization for the SSD for this third-party health insurance contract, and there's another ordinance connected to this coming up next, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so we are introducing the 14321. Any comments or questions? Council members, elected officials, or audience members? Okay. We'll move on to 14421. This is an ordinance authorizing a stop-loss group excess loss medical insurance contract and declaring an emergency, and this is introduced by Councilmember Crowell.
Thank you, President Nisley. And again, this authorizes our SSD into enter into this one-year contract with Sirius America. And as mentioned in the title, it does cover our stop-loss or excess loss medical insurance. This provides the city with protection as a self-employed insurer. It basically is a reimbursement mechanism for claims that exceed predetermined levels. Thank you, President Nisley.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions? If none, we'll move on to 14521. This is an ordinance amending the Athens City Zoning Code, Title 23, to include short-term rentals as recommended by the Athens City Planning Commission, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I think that with the changes that have been recommended, we need to talk about some kind of planning 101 sort of things. There's 2 basic sections of the changes. One is in the permitted use of our zoning code of what is permitted in the R1 zone. And short-term rentals would be permitted in the R1 zone as a permitted right if it is an owner-occupied rental, and it could have 2 people or a total of 2 people being residents as a short-term rental. The other part is if you have a non-owner occupied rental, short-term rental, that would only be allowed in certain areas of the city, basically in those buffer areas, which we can look at the map if you would like to. And that would only be allowed with a Board of Zoning Appeals permission. So that basically says in core areas, only types of short-term rentals that would be allowed would be owner-occupied short-term rentals with basically one bedroom being rented out. If 2 bedrooms, that's okay. 1 in each bedroom. It's a total of 2 people. So basically, what this tries to do is to isolate and insulate core areas of neighborhoods, and in those buffer areas, allow for some limited but use by non-owner occupied people. Pretty straightforward. It's not a radical change. It is providing regulations for things that are happening now in the city that if we do not regulate, will just continue on and possibly create problems. So, thank you.
And so
Questions?
the restricted areas, as I understand, it's if they abut an R2, an R3, and a B zone,
Right.
or there are only 4 other streets currently allowed, East
Yes.
State, Carpenter, Lancaster, and Columbus, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's basically making it permissible where people want to be and making it more difficult in where people would be concerned about it. But we've had several people who've come forward who have been doing an Airbnb or whatever the corporate name is for a year or 2 or 3. Nobody knows about it because that's how a majority of these sort of rentals happen. I don't think that there's going to be many problems going forward. I don't think that there's going to be a rush to have rentals all over the city. And we need to regulate it so that we can ensure the safety and security of our citizens and our visitors.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councilmember McCary.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, are there any limitations to council changing this in the future if this doesn't work out?
Nope.
Okay.
One thing, when you go and change the planning, the zoning code, you have to go through the planning commission process. That gives extra scrutiny because this is like a central key planning element of cities, the ability to be able to zone. Cities have the ability to say what their zones will accept and what they won't accept. And so in the future, if things happen, whatever, I mean, like we're already dealing with it. Airbnbs weren't around however many years ago. We're changing it. One of the things that will enable better management and changes is that some of the going through Title 23 change, you have to go through the Planning Commission. However, some of the code is being changed in the housing, Title, whatever, 29? Ooh, whatever, 20-something. We can change that sooner and quicker than going through the Planning Commission. So that is an area that we could kind of play with if things don't work out.
Thank you.
29.
Other comments or questions? Yes, Councilmember Grace.
I want to express my thanks to Councilmember Fall for the many, many, many hours of research and work that she has put into this particular set of ordinances, and has worked with a lot of different people, and also thanks to the Planning Commission. It's been a very, very thoroughly reviewed ordinance, set of ordinances. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to Paul Logue, our planner. Something that I really want to push against is that this is not a professional or a thought-out set of ordinances. We have professionals. We have somebody, we probably have more than 100 years worth of planning experience with all the people who have looked at this process, these ordinances, and we should honor that and thank that. with all these people who put their energy and muscle brain power into this. So I want to say thank you to Paul. He's amazing. He should get a raise.
He's good.
All right,
Yeah,
other
he's good.
comments or questions? All right,
Thank you.
if none from our council members or elected officials or our audience, we'll move on now to Ordinance 14621. This is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 29, Housing Regulations, Chapter 29.03, Rental, Dwelling, and Housing Permit, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. This is a tag-along with the housing unit, which we just talked about, with being able to kind of change if we need to, because it's an easier process. So the Title 29 is going forward with just basically doing definitional changes and putting in short-term rentals into how we do permits, rental permits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from council members, elected officials, or our audience? If not, we'll move on to Ordinance 14721. This is an ordinance amending certain sections of Athens City Code, Title 17, Municipal Income Tax, Chapter 17.03, Transient Guest Tax, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. This is another tag-along, which makes it required for short-term rentals to pay into the short-term rental transient guest tax, which pays for things like the Athens Convention Bureau, some of that work, and other types of tourism work that we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on Ordinance 14721? Yes, Councilmember McCary.
Thank you. I actually withdraw.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? Council members, elected officials, or our audience members? Okay. We'll move on to 14821. This is an ordinance amending Athens City Code, Title I, General Provisions, Chapter 1.03, Code Fees Established to include short-term rentals, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. This is the money part that we actually talked a lot about last time we passed all those other ordinances that put the money into and fees into Title number 1. But I want to take this opportunity to thank all the people who have been helping me, like Debbie and the President Chris, and all the stuff that we had to keep organized going through, because this is, there's a lot of balls to be juggling in this, and I super appreciate all the work that you guys have done. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, we will move on now to announcements and other business. And next week, we will have a committee meeting. Just before the committee meeting, we will have 2 public hearings, one on the off-street parking, the other one on the short-term rentals. And this is our opportunity in the process, as Councilmember Falls discussed. It's been through committee hearings to Planning Commission for their review, back again, for some more revisions, review by the law director, and now coming forth. And we do appreciate public members coming forward. This is the time for comment. That public discussion night, the public hearings, we'll listen to what citizens have to say about that. Yes.
I would also like to say, if people can't come or do not want to come because of COVID or something, that emails and letters or phone calls are just as good. The public hearing is meant to be something because you have to announce it and advertise it for 30 days before, as a way to let everybody know. And everybody should know that they don't have to be physically in this room to make a public comment at that public hearing.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we have several motions to take care of other business that we've had. Financial reports we've received, so if we could have a motion to accept the October 2021 financial reports.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay, a motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We now would entertain a motion to accept the credit card transactions for October 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And this is the review that's been put in place, required actually by the state auditor, so that there's a second set of eyes reviewing each month's, all the financial credit card transactions for the city. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries, and those credit card transactions have been approved. We now will have two motions that Councilmember Ziff will make for reappointments to the Housing Appeals Board.
Thank you, President Isley. I'd like to make the first motion to accept the reappointment of Patrick Doherty to the Housing Appeals Board.
Second.
All right, and we have a motion and second. This is for a renewal, reappointment of a 3-year term. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Mr. Doherty's been reappointed. Okay.
I'd actually like to give it another go. Make another motion to accept the reappointment of Wesley Ratko to the Housing Appeals Board.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and second for reappointing Mr. Ratko. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, those motions have both been approved there for their reappointments, and we thank them for their service, their volunteer service on this. Our next to last item is an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that are not covered on the agenda tonight. Is there anyone that is wanting to speak? You have up to 3 minutes to speak. Okay, seeing none, we would now have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. We are adjourned at 8:16, and we'll see you next Monday night.